What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC Paris. Now, I am glad that I held off with recording this episode a little bit because just today, as I'm filming this, which it is Thursday night, the week in advance of the fight card, we still have a whole nother week next week. We had 3 newly added matchups to this card just today. One opponent gets a new opponent as well, but we also had some newly added fights on the card. Angela Hill now fighting on the card against Emily Ducote. That's an interesting one. We'll be getting into all that here in a minute. I appreciate you guys for stopping by here. Please hit that like button before we jump into today's episode. And let's make our way over to the show.
It's another day, left jab, right jab, this is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim, looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting, if you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go, I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show, this the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
It's great to be back on the mic as we have a UFC event heading over to Paris, France. For some of you longtime UFC fans or MMA fans, that may sound a little strange to you guys. Almost reminiscent to when the UFC first made its way over to New York. Years back, they didn't do MMA in these places. It was taboo. It seemed like it took forever to finally get MMA over into New York. France is a country that has had the sport of MMA illegal in the past. I forget exactly when they actually made it legal, but I know back in the day it was illegal to even have any type of mixed martial arts promotions taking place in the country. It's obviously the times have changed, and it's great to see the UFC has made its way over to Paris, France for a solid card. We got Tuivasa taking on Gane. Who more fitting to headline this event than Gane? Of course, he represents France like no other. Tuivasa, what a fun partner that he'll have to put on a show with. Other than that, you got a lot of Italians representing here. On the fight card, Marvin Vettori taking on Robert Whittaker. A lot of people would believe that these two are the two best middleweights in the world besides Israel Adesanya. A couple of other fighters have been making some noise in the division too, but Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori, proven fighters in the division. Alessio De Chirico in a co-main event slot against Roman Kopylov. I don't know about all that, but Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood, that's a fun one. And Nassourdine Imavov, also representing France, taking on Joaquin Buckley. That should be a good fight there. Benoit Saint-Denis, unfortunately, is now taking on Gabriel Miranda, where he was supposed to be fighting my boy Christos Giagos. Christos Giagos doing a little bit too much around the house. I guess he was pushing down on the trash bag or whatnot and ended up slicing his finger into a porcelain broken toilet or whatnot. So he had to get stitches, and he wasn't able to jump on this giant opportunity that he had. Unfortunately, Firas Ziam, some young French talent there, taking on the UFC newcomer Michal Figlak, the undefeated Polish fighter. And then we talked about some newly added matchups, which was why I am happy that I'm just getting this video out to you guys now, because otherwise I would have had done separate videos for all these. But Ailin Perez now taking on Stephanie Egger. Stephanie Egger steps in on short notice, replacing, not that you guys probably care, but I'll just let you guys know real quick, replacing Zara Farin. And William Gomis now takes on Jarno Errens. This is a fight that I'm very much looking forward to. Two new UFC newcomers. If that makes sense, a double negative makes a positive. You guys get what I'm saying here. 2 fighters making their UFC debut. They're both very entertaining, and I enjoyed breaking down tape on them, so that should be a good fight there. And then Angela Hill steps right back into the cage, taking on Emily Ducote. I love that fight. Angela Hill coming off a big victory. She loves to stay active. Emily Ducote, some new fresh blood. Coming over to the women's mixed martial arts side of things. I like that fight there. So you guys know how we do it here. We're going to be starting at the bottom of this card, working our way to the top. And of course, also Khalid Taha versus Cristian Quiñonez. That fight was just added today as well. So we will be working our way up towards the top. Before we jump into the fight card, I do want to apologize. I didn't get last week's or earlier this week's Dana White's Contender Series video out to you guys. And I'm sorry I didn't get the recap of UFC 278. I did have some personal things going on. It was a long week and a half for me. So like I said earlier, I'm just glad to be back on the mic talking mixed martial arts. Once in a while, the real world hits you. And I'm sure as I get thousands of you guys watching these videos, I'm sure the real world is hitting you guys nonstop as well. So nothing but love from me out to all you guys. I hope everything is good with all you. And I appreciate you guys tuning in once again. So with no further ado, let's jump into the first fight. Angela Hill stepping right back into the cage, taking on another young gun in Emily Ducote. Of course, Angela Hill just coming off a big victory where she was able to take out the highly respected Lupita Garinez. That was a huge victory for Angela Hill in the sense that if she would have lost that would have been 4 losses in a row. Nobody wants to see a 4-fight losing skid on their resume. Although Angela Hill does have the respect in the game, I'm sure she probably still would have got another fight. The UFC has a good relationship with her, but that was a huge win. Let me make that clear. Emily Ducote also had a huge win in her UFC debut where she took out Jessica Penne, another older, crafty veteran. And it looks like Emily Ducote is going out here as she makes some noise in the UFC, and she's going after girls with well-established names here. If she gets a victory over Angela Hill, she already has the one over Jessica Penne. I think you can expect Emily to really stir the division up here in the near future. And she has that type of potential. In her fight against Jessica Penne, really brutalized her on the feet, was cracking her up with some heavy shots. She shows to have some real power. She's technically sound, and she's going to give a lot of girls problem on the feet, which is interesting because we know Angela Hill has great footwork and she's a very solid striker as well. So I'm interested to see how the striking exchanges play out. Both women are very tough. They're both very mentally tough. Angela Hill is always pushing forward. She's always looking to snatch around. She ends up participating in a lot of close fights. In her last fight, she dug deep. I think she took that fight in the 3rd round by pressing forward against Lupita. And I expect her to try to do the same here. But I think at the end of the day, that Emily Ducote is just going to have a little bit more pop on her shots. And I think that Angela Hill is going to feel that power, and she's going to back down slightly, and you're going to see it if it goes to the judges' scorecards. I do also think there's some potential for Ducote to really pick it up and maybe not necessarily feeling the finish. I mean, we'll see how that goes. She has that type of power, but you guys know how it is in this division. It's not the most likely scenario. But what I want to say is that I wouldn't be shocked if Ducote goes out there and actually lands some big shots and bloodies Angela Hill up and really puts it on her. Keep an eye out for Ducote to possibly try to sneak in a takedown or two throughout the fight, and we'll see how that plays out. But I do have Emily Ducote. Now, when it comes to the betting line here, as I told you guys, a lot of these fights were just thrown on the card today, so there's no betting lines on a couple of these fights here that we're going to be talking about. I would love to pull one up for you guys here. I'm predicting that this line is going to settle in or open up right around Emily Ducote being a -155 favorite. Anywhere from that -150 to the -180 type range. I think people are going to respect her last fight, her UFC debut, a little bit more so than Angela Hill, her last fight where she got the victory over Lupita Garinez, which was obviously a big victory. We talked about that. But Lupita Garinez is a highly respected fighter, so it'll be interesting to see how people are looking at Angela Hill coming off that victory. But I still say that Emily Ducote comes in as a pretty hefty favorite, however you want to say that, right around a -160, 170. So we'll keep an eye on that. Hit the comment section up once the odds are announced, and we'll see how off I was on that or how right I was. But I do have Emily Ducote to win this fight. I think that she wins a unanimous decision, not a split decision like we see Angela Hill and many of those, a unanimous decision. She may even take every round. I think she takes every round, 30-27. One of the newly added matchups, we have William Gomis taking on Jarno Errens, the French William taking on the Dutch Jarno Errens. I'm very happy they threw this fight together. I've been very intrigued with both these fighters. Breaking down tape on them, they both bring the fight. They're solid strikers. I expect this fight to really be a crowd pleaser. I really do. Watching William Gomis, he has a couple fights on YouTube you guys can check out. Very scrappy on the feet, very energetic, technically sound. He does something that I found pretty interesting. He'll throw like a double kick, which you don't see a lot of fighters throw. I mean, he literally will throw a body kick and then instantly whip that same leg right back around and throw another kick. Or even what I saw him do as well is he'll even throw one kick and kick immediately with the other kick. He does some crazy type stuff. There's a lot of speed coming at you. And I know what you guys are probably thinking. Oh, an athletic kickboxer, an athletic striker, probably lacking with this ground game very much. I don't necessarily think that's the case, actually. There was a couple fights that I saw of him where he was pretty sound with his grappling, actually looking for submissions himself, defending takedowns pretty solidly. And I think that he's actually decently well-rounded and a decently complete fighter. I do think that his striking is his bread and butter, though. And then you got Jarno Errens, who's more of a striking-based fighter as well, coming off a decision victory over Alisher Abdullayev. That was only 2 weeks and 4 days ago. Okay, that fight just took place over in Brave. So, he just made the walk, stepping right back in. William Gomis actually just fought 2 months ago as well. So both these fighters have been active. Now, Jarno took a loss against Mert. Let's see if I can get this one for you guys. Azlidarium. I believe that's a Turkish name, but you can pull that fight up on YouTube. And I was not too impressed with Jarno in that fight. He was taken down quite a few times, and just that fight was definitely not his best showing. Now, you can also pull up a fight of his where he had a devastating knockout over Max Koga, the German fighter, where he showcased some of his power. And so it's interesting when you're trying to get a read on him, because like I said, he's had some performances that are pretty stellar, but then he's also had some performances that are quite questionable. Where on the other hand, when you look at William, I think that he's you get a pretty clear read on who William is at this point, and I expect him to only get better and better, obviously at 25 years old. But you take a look at even some of his losses. There was one fight where he got caught in a knee bar. That's a rookie mistake. It was early in his career. Obviously, he's working on his grappling, and then his other loss was his first pro fight. So since those losses, I mean, he's really caught a groove here, and I'm actually going to be edging. I'm going to be edging him to take the fight here. Now, again, we have no betting line on this fight, so I'm actually very interested to see where this line opens up at. I think it's a close fight. I do think it's a close fight. I think that this fight will spend a lot of time on the feet, and they'll be going at it back and forth. I think there's some potential for Jarno to land a big shot, but I think that if it goes to a decision, I expect William Gomis to be a little bit more active, a little bit more skilled there. And that's saying a lot, because Jarno obviously fighting out of the Netherlands. He has the Dutch kickboxing background and whatnot, I'm sure, and all that. And you see his skills there as well. Throws a little bit more power into his shots, while William will look to more just tag you up and land more per volume. I think this is a close fight. And I wouldn't be shocked, actually, if William Gomis is going to open up as the dog. But I'm going to be picking William Gomis, so let's see where this fight settles in at or opens up at. Hit the comment section up. Let's see how I was on that. And yep, not on Bovada, so nothing here to look at. And I will be taking William Gomis to win this fight. And does he get the finish? I think he wins a decision here. I'm favoring more so a decision victory for him. Ailin Perez taking on Stephanie Egger, another fighter jumping right back on a fight card. Is Stephanie Egger. Of course, she's not happy at all the way the last fight took place against Mayra Bueno Silva. A little bit of controversy there, where she didn't believe that she tapped. That was weird. She was up against the cage. You couldn't really see what was going on. I will say this. Depending on how you want to look at that fight, there really is not much to really analyze. But Stephanie Egger was looking pretty stout there in those limited exchanges. She kind of got on top, although she did give her arm up, right? She did get submitted, but I I've been decently impressed with how Stephanie Egger has been looking in general. I feel like her game is kind of rounding out. She's strong in the grappling exchanges. She's a judo black belt. When she clinches up, I mean, she really has some skill to throw fighters around with. Her striking's coming around. We know that she's rangy. She's long as well. She will have about a 2.5-inch reach advantage going into this fight against the UFC newcomer. Ailin Perez has been really going in and bullying the women that she's been fighting over in, let's see if we can pull up the promotion here, but she's an Argentinian fighter. She's been fighting over in the South American scene, over in Samurai Fight House. And you can pull some of those fights up on YouTube, and they're pretty interesting. It looks like it's just a little warehouse where a couple people got together, threw a cage there, and it's going down. So Ailin Perez favors her grappling very much. She was going into a lot of her fights that I saw, ripping their opponents down to the ground, just almost not even in the most technical way, but just time using proper timing, but just really just getting a hold of her opponent and just plopping them down on the mat, and then working her way into just I'll say it again, another bully type of position, and just almost beating them down like something that you would see over in a schoolyard scrap, if you guys know what I'm talking about. I mean, just really just throwing a lot of volume, just kind of catty, and just forcing the referee to step in. So I don't necessarily see her doing that to Stephanie Egger. I don't. And I don't think that Ailin Perez is necessarily the most talented jiu-jitsu player. I don't see her pulling off some wizardry type armbar or whatnot. And I think that Stephanie Egger is going to be really motivated coming into this fight. And I'm leaning Stephanie Egger to get the job done here. Now, this is another fight that we don't have a line on, so it'll be interesting to see where this line opens up at. But you see some of the work that Stephanie Egger has been doing as of recently. Her game has really been rounding out, working some ground and pound there, pulling off an armbar here, and and we'll talk about those victories. Of course, the armbar over Jessica Rose Clark, and the KO/TKO finish over Shayna Young, and lost to Tracy Cortez. We know Cortez is a very, very tough fight, tough outing. She has some solid wrestling. That was a learning experience for Egger, and then the weird fight that just happened. So Stephanie Egger, of course, will have the experience, having already fought in the UFC a couple of times here. You mix all that together, and I'm gonna slightly edge Egger. I'm gonna edge Egger to win this fight here. Although there is a little bit of an X factor with Ailin Perez, because she's been going in there fighting lower level opponents. We really don't know how her skill set's going to transfer to the step up in competition. Also, take note that her loss, she's 7-1, with her loss being way of a DQ. And I do believe that she was handling business in that fight as well. So essentially an undefeated fighter here is Ailin Perez. And if you want to see something fun, when you pull up her fights, watch her bust out into a split and start dropping it like it's hot and doing all that type of stuff. So if she gets a victory, do expect her to put on a show after the fight and to become an instant crowd pleaser and for people to gravitate towards her. You see her shadow boxing here, working the takedowns earlier. I mean, she's a tough cookie, but I will lean Stephanie Egger. I stand behind this slight edge to Stephanie Egger, and let's see where this line opens up. This is a tricky one here. I wouldn't be surprised if people really respect some of the work Perez is doing, and she opens up as a slight favorite. Maybe Egger is right around a +120, or maybe Egger is the slight favorite. Let's see here. I'm interested to see where that line opens up at. Firas Ziam taking on Michal Figlak, the undefeated Polish fighter. Firas Ziam, 12-4, has that UFC experience as Michal, however you want to say that, Michal. Figlak is the UFC newcomer, but keep this in mind, Figlak is actually the older fighter at 26 years old. Although he is a top prospect coming in, Firas Ziam, you could essentially look at him as a prospect as well still. In the UFC, he's 2-2. He had the loss to Don Madge at the time. He was extremely young. That was 3 years ago. He was basically, 22 years old at the time. He was a young kid. Don Madge did not even win a strike with him. If you guys know Don Madge, he is a kickboxer himself, the Muay Thai specialist, I believe. Wanted nothing to do with the Ziam on the feet. Was really trying to work the takedowns and ended up squeaking by with the decision. After that, Ziam takes out Jamie Malarkey, the very talented striker, and then takes out Luigi Vendramini, somewhat of an underrated fighter. And then in his last fight, really got I shouldn't say that, actually. I was going to say he had his ground game exploited, but that's not really the case. Terrence McKinney is a very underrated wrestler, and he went in there and he ended up taking the back of Ziam, got that rear naked choke. But McKinney is a very underrated grappler in general, so I shouldn't say exploited Ziam's grappling and takedown defense, because he's actually not that bad there. Of course, he has the striking base. He's been working on those other elements, but keep in mind, of course, his strength is his striking, and he's able to use his striking in a different way. He has that real lengthy frame. He's 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. It's almost Israel Adesanya-esque for his division. And then you have an opponent here in Michal that's 5'10". He's going to be the smaller fighter. I'm expecting that reach to be around maybe 71 inches, right around 70 inches. Maybe I'm off there, but we don't have a reach here. But breaking down tape on him, of course, he's going to have a reach disadvantage. Now, the thing is with Figlak, when you break down tape on him, he's very good at closing the distance in his fights. That's something that he does very well. His footwork is very nice. So although he'll be undersized there, he will cut the cage off. He'll close in on Ziam, and I expect him to have his opportunity to land his shots on the feet as well. I really don't expect Ziam to be able to strike at bay. And I think that's what Ziam would want in a perfect world. But Ziam is scrappy. If you close the distance on him, and he'll clinch you up, he'll throw some Muay Thai knees at you. I mean, he's dangerous in all elements there. And I'll tell you guys right now, I've been very back and forth on who I was going to pick for this fight. I do like Ziam. Ziam is a fighter that I really like. I like the fact that he has already 4 UFC fights under his belt. Well, Figlak's making his debut. I was gonna pick Ziam to win this fight, but I'm not. I was rewatching some more tape on Figlak, and there was a couple moments in the one fight I was watching where he was kind of slowing the pace down a little bit. But then you really got to watch the entire fight. You gotta watch these entire fights, because there's moments where Figlak really was impressive, the way he would just close the distance and really explode and land some heavy shots. And I expect him to solidify some rounds with those explosive shots and closing the distance. And like I said, he's a true athlete. Look at the size of his legs. He can really move in there. And I wouldn't be surprised if Figlak gets a takedown or two as well on Ziam. And that's a whole nother element there as well. I think Figlak may be a little bit stronger there. So Figlak is a minus 210 favorite coming in his UFC debut against a fighter that already has 4 fights in the octagon. I think that shows you that people do respect his game, and I do respect his game as well. So although Ziam is a very, very talented striker, you see him working the pads, I really have a lot of respect for the work he can do on the feet. I think that Figlak figures that puzzle out and edges him there. And at a minus 210, I think there's more value on Firas Ailin. I think there's more value on a plus 164 line than Michal Figlak. I mean, I want to see these guys square up. I want to see a little bit more information come out during the fight week. Figlak, I want to check some more interviews with him as well as he's making his UFC debut. I want to see where his mind's at. But prematurely, I think that there's more value on Firas Ailin. I have to say that at plus 164, that this fight should be maybe a little bit closer. That I will take Michal Figlak to win this fight. Benoit Saint-Denis taking on Gabriel Miranda. Miranda, of course, stepping in on short notice as Christos Giagos is not able to make the trip over to France. Very unfortunate. The Giagos versus Saint-Denis fight is a fight that I really wanted to see play out. I think it was a fight that would have been a little bit more competitive, in my opinion. I think they matched up well. Gabriel Miranda, more of a jiu-jitsu player, or at least I believe his strength is more his submission skills and his grappling. Not too impressed with the striking I've seen. I think that Benoit Saint-Denis will have a significant edge there. He's pretty stout, pretty solid on the feet. He's a well-rounded fighter. I've been impressed with what I've seen from him. If you remember, he made his UFC debut against Zaleski dos Santos in an absolute war. I mean, you want to talk about a fighter showcasing his heart. You go run the tape back on that fight. I mean, Saint-Denis showed that I mean, he's an absolute warrior against Zaleski dos Santos there. That was a very weird fight. If you guys remember how that played out, the referee really dropped the ball a couple times in that fight. But at the end of the day, you can't take anything away from Saint-Denis. He showed so much heart in that fight. And he showed skill too. He showed grit and skill. And that was his debut. And then he goes in his next fight, an official play of mine, and went out there and put on a masterclass against Nicholas Stolz, a fighter that, for being quite honest, is not really a UFC caliber fighter. So you take that with a grain of salt. But I'm not really sure if Gabriel Miranda is a UFC caliber fighter, for being honest here. I think that Benoit Saint-Denis can keep this fight on the feet. And I think that he can get the better of the striking exchanges. I think he'll be more physically strong than Miranda. And I think that he gets the job done here. And he could do it in a couple different ways. But the one way I do see Miranda possibly pulling off the upset is if they start to get into a little bit of a brawl, a little bit of a crazy fight, and somehow Saint-Denis kind of loses his balance, whether he gets dropped or he just kind of falls out of position, and Miranda is able to possibly snatch up a neck. Maybe he gets a hold of a guillotine or snatches up some type of submission. He does have some good submission skills there. So, of course, no fighter is exempt from the possibility of being submitted, especially by a guy like Miranda, who does have skills there. He's put a lot of time on the mat. He's 32 years old. This is a veteran. He's the older fighter here. Saint-Denis, believe it or not, only 26 years old. So a lot of room for growth with him as well. I think he obviously is the much more promising fighter than a guy like Miranda. But Saint-Denis shows a lot of promise, and could be a fighter that we see really representing the country of France. Being a real staple. Representing the country of France, which of course, I mean, that's essentially what he's doing here, but you guys know what I'm saying. I mean, he only has 2 UFC fights. We need to see him have more of a track record, and he could be a long-term representative of the country of France. He's coming into this fight as a minus 260, a favorite, with the comeback on Miranda at plus 200. Sounds about right. Wouldn't be surprised if that line opens up some more, as we have a lot of time until the fights take place. Could see Saint-Denis settling in on Bovada over here, right around a minus 360. So I can see about 100 points of movement easily by the time this fight takes place. And I think that Saint-Denis wins a unanimous decision here. We got another UFC newcomer. This card is just filled with UFC newcomers. Abu Magomedov taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Abu Magomedov comes into the UFC. He's no rookie, though. I mean, this is a fighter that has 29 pro fights. He's fought over in PFL. He's fought over in KSW. He's fought in a couple major promotions. I mean, this is a guy that's he's been around the block, right? He's finally having an opportunity here to fight in the number 1 fighting organization in the world. Takes on Dustin Stoltzfus, a guy that's been doing it quite regularly at this point now. Since that awkward victory over Joseph Pfeiffer, he's now had 4 fights in the UFC. He's only 1-4, but the UFC likes him so much that he just got a new extension or a new deal signed. So he's got that going for him. I guess the UFC was pretty impressed with his performance against Dwight Grant, which I guess they should have been. I mean, that was a big fight for him. He really handled Dwight Grant in that fight. And there's some similarities of Dwight Grant and Abu Magomedov with the length and whatnot. And as far as their skill sets go, they're similar to an extent, but I do believe that Magomedov is a more talented version of Grant. Magomedov definitely has some solid grappling skills, and that's one thing that he does much better than Grant. But on the feet, he kind of has an awkward, rangy type of striking style that really gives some of his opponents trouble. He comes at them in a lot of awkward types of ways. We've seen him, if you pull up some of his fights, we've seen him pull off some strange knockouts where he's hitting guys from awkward angles and whatnot. And I do expect him to get the better of the striking in this fight against Stoltzfus. I do. Now, that being said, his striking defense at times isn't the best. A couple fights ago, he did get slept. He got knocked out in a very awkward way, and that was against Louis Taylor over in PFL. That was 3.5 years ago. But he got caught with a very awkward shot and got put out. once a fighter gets put out like that, I mean, there's definitely a realistic possibility of that happening again. Another thing to take into consideration, Magomedov has not been that active. That fight being 3.5 years ago, then fighting against Slavisa 3 years and 3 months ago, and then his last fight being over a year and a half over in KSW. So, he's finally getting back in there. Meanwhile, Dustin was just in there under a month ago. It hasn't even been a month since his Grant fight. That all being said, I'm not going to be picking Dustin Stoltzfus to win this fight. He's came up short a lot of times, and I haven't overly been impressed with him throughout his UFC career. He had the solid Grant fight, but again, I have not been really that sold on him. You look at the battles that he's been in against Vieira. We talked about that, the Mearshart fight. He just seems to always fall short. And again, I know he's just coming off a victory, but I have a feeling he's going to fall short here. I think that Magomedov is a tricky fighter, and I think he'll be a little bit more talented. I do have Magomedov to win the fight. He's a minus 250 favorite to win this fight against Dustin Stoltzfus. I think that line is a little high. I think that the line should be more around a minus 210, 220. The fact that he hasn't been that active, having those question marks surrounding him, it's a little tough for him to come into his UFC debut as a minus 250, in my opinion. And then you add that with the fact that Stoltzfus looked to be the best version of himself in his last fight. So I wouldn't be shocked if some people are taking a shot on Stoltzfus at dog odds like that. I'm sure some of you guys are going to be doing that. At the end of the day, though, Abu Magomedov is the better fighter. When you break down tape on him, he is the better fighter, and he has more elements to win this fight. I wouldn't be shocked if Magomedov pulls off a late sub, second, third round sub. Wouldn't be shocked if he lands some big shots in the feet against Stoltzfus as well. Overall, Magomedov is the better fighter, but there's some question marks going into this fight. Let's see how he looks on fight night. Nassourdine Imavov taking on Joaquin Buckley. Buckley stepping back into the cage, coming off a huge victory where he came in as an underdog against Albert Duryov. You guys know that was an official play of mine. That was on the undercard, or it was below the big Kevin Hall and Tim Means fight. You guys remember that fight card. Buckley really showed up in that fight. You guys remember there was like a little bit of a personal beef with him and Albert Duryov. They trained together. He felt like Duryov was disrespecting him a little bit, as Duryov thought that was going to be an easy fight. Supposedly he had handled Buckley in their training in the past, so he thought it was going to be an easy fight. That was not the case. Joaquin Buckley right now is really, really starting to hit his prime. He's been looking to be in phenomenal shape. He pushes the pace late in the fights. He has good power. He has good boxing. Of course, he has solid kicks. I mean, he landed one of the most fantastic kicks that you'll ever see in an MMA fight, period. He's a well-rounded fighter. Buckley's trying to entice me to pick him once again here as he comes in as the underdog. This is a tough one for me, if I'm being honest. I really wanted to take Buckley to win this fight, but I'll tell you what, all those things that we just talked about in regards to Buckley, as good as he does all those things, I mean, he has, you know how they've been showing that little meme recently with the dog inside the chest as he got dog in the heart. Buckley's as much of an example of that as anybody in the UFC right now. That being said, Nassourdine Imavov is really hitting his stride right now. He had one little bump in the road against Phil Hawes where Phil Hawes was just leeching him against the cage, and it was a fight that he kind of slowed down a little bit in. But even late in that fight, he almost finished Phil Hawes in the third round. But since that fight, and if you really look at the work he's done before that fight, Imavov is an absolute sniper. He's a technician. He's the better boxer. He throws much more straight shots, much more crisp shots. He lands the mark much more precisely. And listen, I'm not going to forget when I saw Buckley gets knocked out by Alessio De Chirico, or when he got knocked out by Kevin Holland. I mean, he goes in there to throw down, but he leaves some holes defensively as well. And a guy like Imavov will capitalize on you there. I got to go with Imavov to win this fight. I just think that Imavov is going to land the cleaner shots in this fight. I do believe that. He has some serious power. He's well-rounded too. He's very up to par with his grappling. So understand that as well. I think this fight takes place on the feet, though. I do think that this fight should take place for the majority of the time on the feet. And I think the better striker is going to get the job done here. And Imavov is the more precise striker. And he's really confident right now. He's only 26 years old. Not that Buckley's old, but Imavov's only 26 years old. You're seeing a lot of fighters in this fight card that are still very young and have a lot of room for growth. Imavov's only 26 years old, and he only has 13 pro fights, coming off 2 victories where he finished Ian Heinisch and finished Edmund Shabazian. The Jordan Williams victory in his debut, and then before that, a victory over in Errens against Jonathan Manure. Not to be confused with Jonathan Manure, but his cousin Jonathan Manure, who some of you guys will be familiar with. But it was just that Phil Hawes fight that was a learning experience for him. Comes into this fight with a 1-inch reach disadvantage, although he is much taller, 5 inches taller. Understand, the reach doesn't only translate to your arms. All right, Imavov throws some nice kicks from the outside as well, and I think that he uses good footwork, and I think that he'll dictate the striking exchanges a little bit more so. I do have Imavov to win the fight. You guys, I love Buckley. I really wanted to pick him in a dog spot here, but I really like Imavov. All right, I've really grown to like this guy, Imavov. He's came through for me as of recently. He's made me some money, and he's a fighter that really shows a lot of promise. So I am on Imavov here. Take a look at the betting line. Imavov is at minus 250 here. I'll say this much again. As much as I do like Imavov, which I was just talking about, that line's a little high for me. Minus 250. Joaquin Buckley is slightly over a 2-1 underdog. Imavov should be maybe more like a minus 225 here, but maybe we're splitting hairs. Imavov, in my opinion, is the better fighter. Buckley does have fight-ending ability on the feet. He can land a big shot. But if he doesn't land that big shot, I'm having a little bit of a tough time seeing Buckley win a decision against Imavov. Imavov comes in good shape. We talked about that Phil Hawes fight, but if you guys watched the tape in that fight, it was a different type of fight. Phil Hawes was hanging all over him. We know Phil Hawes is a very solid wrestler, and that was a different fight. I think that this fight is a striking battle where Imavov will pace himself very nicely, and he'll be the more technical fighter here, and he'll get the job done. And keep an eye out for a possible knockout victory for Imavov late in this fight. This fight was also just added to the card. We have Khalid Taha taking on Cristian Quiñonez. Of course, Quiñonez coming off Dana White's Contender Series. He had a very, very entertaining fight on the show. If you guys missed it, he fought the Chinese fighter where they really went at it, and Quiñonez started to pull away the longer that fight went on. I was impressed with Quiñonez. He's rangy. I like his boxing. In fact, that's the main thing I do like about his game is his boxing. I think that he's an accurate puncher. He was finding the mark pretty nicely in that fight. He's obviously tough. He was taking a couple of shots as well. But he's a scrappy dude, and I've been decently impressed with him. Now, Khalid Taha carries some serious power on the feet. So this fight does possess the ability to be a real fan-friendly fight. This fight, in fact, in my opinion, has the potential to be fight of the night. I favor this fight here. And then we also talked about that fight earlier on the card. The William Gomis and Jarno Errens. I think that fight, as well as the Firas Ziam and Michal Figlak, and then this fight that we're talking about, these 3 fights really have potential for fight of the night written all over them. Khalid Taha, like I said, he favors his striking, which I do expect both these fighters to go at it on the feet for 15 minutes. Khalid Taha does have fight-ending ability there. We've seen him starch Boston Salmon, the ex-pro boxer, a guy that unfortunately really fell into that knockout very often late in his career, but that does take a little bit of the zest away from that knockout. But Taha was one of the first guys to really put a stamp on putting Salmon out like that. After that, Taha did run into some turbulence, right? Essentially 3 losses in a row. The Bruno Silva one, I believe it was overturned or whatnot, but that was a loss there, I do believe. And then you want to talk about his UFC debut against Nathaniel. That was a fight that he wanted to strike so bad, that 4 years ago. He wanted to strike so bad, but Nathaniel, the very tough English wrestler, was just all over the takedowns and was controlling him down on the mat there. This fight won't be like that. Taha's going to have his opportunities to strike. And real quick, though, we also got to point out his last 2 losses against Sergey Morozov, another tough wrestler that did use his wrestling in that fight. Raoni Barcelos, the very talented Brazilian wrestler. I know you don't hear that too often, but Barcelos, and that was when Barcelos was the better version of himself. Barcelos has kind of fell off a little bit, but we're talking about some top talent there. So understand that when you're looking at Taha and all these losses, it's kind of a strange resume. Taha still is a talented fighter. That all being said, I think that Quiñonez is going to get the better of the boxing exchanges. Now, Taha will load up his shots a little bit more so. He'll look for that knockout. And if he doesn't land that big shot, I think that Quiñonez will out-volume Taha. He'll land some of the more crisp shots from the outside as they're scrapping back and forth. Taha sometimes ends up, like I said, really loading up with his shots and ends up falling short a little bit. But if he does land, watch out. So I think there's definitely a possibility for Khalid Taha to get the knockout victory here. But I definitely favor Cristian Quiñonez to get the better overall in the boxing exchanges. And there's potential Quiñonez lands a big shot as well. Taha is shown to have a pretty tough chin and not necessarily favoring Quiñonez getting that knockout. I think he more volumes Taha up. But I am going to be taking the UFC newcomer here, Cristian Quiñonez. I'm not going to be able to pull up a betting line for you guys here. Double check it real quick one more time. But nope, no betting line. Another fight that was added freshly to the card. So we'll see where the line opens up on this fight. I wouldn't be shocked if it goes a couple different ways. Maybe Taha opens up as the favorite. I mean, it's not like Cristian Quiñonez has really made a name for himself. I know he's 16-3, but has fought some lower level competition early. But also keep in mind, for a 26-year-old, he does have a lot of experience, has more fights than the UFC veteran Taha there too as well. So that's another thing I like when we talk about Quiñonez. I do have Quiñonez to win a decision, and I expect this fight to really be fireworks. I expect these guys to go at it. Two fighters in Charles Jourdain and Nathaniel Wood that were just in there very recently as well. Charles Jourdain, of course, put on a great show against Shane Burgos in a controversial, I believe it was a split. Was it a split? No, it was a majority decision loss. But a lot of people thought that Jourdain could have took that fight. It was a close fight. Burgos really relied on his wrestling in order to seal that victory. Jourdain had some success in the feet. He landed some big shots. We know Jourdain really favors his striking. He's very polished up there. And Burgos, there was a good amount of time in that fight where Burgos really didn't want to entertain that type of style of a fight, which is kind of rare because Burgos is a beast and usually is more than willing to engage there. So that just shows you the skills that Jourdain has there. Charles Jourdain, only 26 years old. I'm going to say it again, still very young. And this is a fighter that you wouldn't necessarily think is only 26 years old. He's now had a good amount of fights in the UFC. I mean, we'll run it back real quick because it goes back even further than his last 5 fights, I believe. I mean, he's had a good amount of fights, dating all the way back to 2019, where he did have a loss against Des Green, an underrated fighter. Unfortunately, if you guys remember Des Green, I believe he did crash into somebody on the highway. I believe he might have been. I don't want to get into all that, but I think someone did end up being deceased, and the UFC parted ways with him. But he was a talented fighter. Doo Ho Choi. He had the knockout over him. Then he had a split decision loss to Andre Fili, the very talented Fili. The Cooley Bao fight was a good one as well. He had to come back. He did face some adversity in that fight. Ended up taking the last 2 rounds, I do believe. The Marcelo Rojo knockout. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of big names under his belt, but I think that time's coming in the near future. Nathaniel Wood, a fighter that's still really looking to make a name for himself. The prospect. People respect his game as well. Coming off that win against Charles Rosa. I think that Nathaniel Wood's going to want to try to get this fight down to the mat. I think he's going to want to try to mix things up a little bit more so. Well, Charles Jourdain would love to engage in a straight up striking war if Nathaniel Wood wants to go that route. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I think Charles Jourdain is going to land some clean shots on the feet, and I think that he's going to get the better of Nathaniel Wood there. Now, if Nathaniel Wood's going to have success, he's going to have to, like I said, mix things up, maybe get on top of Jourdain a little bit, try to gas him out a little bit, make it a grueling fight, mix in the grappling with the striking, and just kind of keep Jourdain on his heels. But if he allows Jourdain to do what he does best, it could really be a long night for Nathaniel Wood. I'm telling you guys now, Jourdain most definitely has fight-ending ability. He almost got it done in his last fight against the very tough Burgos. He's got it done against a couple other fighters, and wouldn't be surprised if Jourdain gets a knockout here. But at the very least, I got Jourdain winning this fight. I like Charles here. He'll come in 3 inches taller. Both guys have a 69-inch reach, but expect that 3-inch height advantage, that length advantage, to transfer into Charles Jourdain's kicking game from the outside. And as far as from a betting standpoint, let's take a look at this. Charles Jourdain right now a -140 with Nathaniel Wood at +116. I think that line is very accurate. I like that line right there. I think that's where it should be. Nathaniel Wood, of course, has the ability to mix things up. And if Charles Jourdain isn't continuously working on his takedown defense and his grappling, that's where he could fall into some trouble as well. We saw that he wasn't really able to keep Burgos off him in those pivotal points, and it cost him the fight. Let's see if Nathaniel Wood can do something similar there. I favor Jourdain to stuff those takedowns, keep the fight standing, and get the job done there. Nasrat Haqparast taking on John the Bull Makdessi. John the Bull Makdessi, coming off a big victory against Ignacio Bahamendez, showed a lot of heart in that fight. That was a real brawl, and that was a fight that he was coming into that fight off a year layoff. And if you take a look at what John Makdessi's been doing as of recently, he has not been active at all. Dating back to the Abel Trujillo fight, that was 4.5 years ago. Then he finally steps back in 7 months later against Ross Pearson. From there, you got 3 years and a 4-month layoff. And then you go to a 2-year and a 4-month layoff. And then you go to a 1 year and a 4-month layoff. So we're talking about in his last 3 fights specifically, he's averaging 1 fight per year. And you mix that with the fact that he's 37 years old. I'm not too crazy about that. I know he's coming off that big win. I would have liked to have seen him back in the mix quicker after that fight. I would have liked to have seen him have a quicker turnaround. And for whatever reason, that wasn't the case. Still looks to be in phenomenal shape. Makdessi has some good power in his hands. And he's a decent striker overall. He's decently technical all around with his kickboxing. Kind of has T-Rex arms a little bit. There has been rumors that some doctors have diagnosed him with Artem lobavitis. And you could see it at times come out a little bit where his arms just look a little bit like a T-Rex. And we'll take a look at the reach here. He will be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage against Nasrat. And they say 68 on Tapology, but I think he slid a few bucks under the table to get that 68. I think they're more like 66, but I'm not trying to put him out, but that's just the word that's been going around. But just joking around a little bit. But John does look a little bit short with his arms at times, but he uses good footwork and he closes the distance and he lands big shots. Landed some big shots on Bahamendez. You want to talk about landing a big shot? Let's run the tape back real quick. Let's talk about some of the big knockouts that he's had back in the day. We're going to talk about the big knockout over Shane Campbell, Hene Forche. What was the big knockout that he had? There it is. It was the Kyle Watson knockout. That was the spinning back fist. That was a beautiful knockout. I mean, he's been fighting in the UFC since 2010. You take that into consideration. He's a long time veteran. He's fought Dennis Hallman. It's kind of interesting that he lost rear naked choke. I was just watching a video earlier of Dennis Hallman when he came into the UFC in his Speedo. If you guys remember that, saw that fight live at the bar. It was crazy. But back to the fight here. Let me cut to the chase. Nasrat was going through some personal issues. He lost his mom, and as it would affect any man, definitely seemed to affect him a lot. Maybe more than the average guy. He obviously had a true bond with his mother, and I think that may have been part of the reason why he hasn't really looked like himself over his last couple fights. He's on a 2-fight losing skid, lost to Bobby Green and Dan Hooker. Also taking into consideration, he's fighting some high-level talent there. Victories over Rafa Garcia and Alex Munoz before that. Then his loss against Drew Dober. The Drew Dober fight is really when the hype train kind of got derailed, because going into that fight, he was a big favorite. Dober was the dog. Dober landed that big shot, and then since then, Nasrat has gone 2-2. But just keep in mind, Nasrat was really hyped up just a couple years ago. And obviously, there's still some hype behind him. He comes into this fight, which we'll take a look right now. Comes into this fight right now in Bovada as a -220 over the veteran in Makdessi. So people still showing him respect. But if you would have seen Nasrat in a spot against Makdessi like this some years back, he's coming into this fight probably right around a -400 or whatnot. So obviously people have came down to earth a little bit on him. Looks a little heavy right here. Interested to see what he looks like at the weigh-ins. But here's the key to the fight for Nasrat. Nasrat, he needs to use his footwork in this fight. John Makdessi at times can plot forward, and he's a little bit more flat-footed, where Nasrat's a little bit more light in his feet. And Nasrat needs to work the body kicks, work the kick game, obviously the boxing as well. But I wouldn't want to see him just go out there and slug it out with Makdessi, because Makdessi does carry some big power. And if you mix things up too much, before you know it, you get clipped. We saw him get knocked out against Dober. The chin has been tested. He's bounced back good in his last 4 fights, though. He's eaten some shots. He's been fine. But Makdessi does carry some serious power. Again, we saw what he did to Bahamendez. Had Bahamendez wobbled all around the cage there. You gotta go Nasrat here. Nasrat, 27 years old, another fighter, still has so much time to do work, but at only 27 years old, I think that he gets his head right going into this fight. I think he's in a better spot now. It's been some time since he lost his mom and whatnot. I think that he's in a good situation going into this fight against a veteran in Makdessi, but he should get the job done. As far as from a betting perspective, line's a little high. But I shouldn't say it's high. It is a little high in the sense it's a minus 220 line. But as far as when you look at this fight, it's accurate. It's an accurate line. Minus 220 is not bad. If you want to take Nasrat there, try to steal a couple units, put it in your pocket, or possibly get greedy, throw him in a parlay. Nasrat is a talented fighter, and I think that he kind of rights the ship here in this fight against Makdessi. Alessio De Chirico taking on Roman Kopylov. Not exactly sure how this fight snuck up to the co-main event. I mean, I guess for the fact that these guys do deliver entertaining fights, but we're talking about guys that have lost in total out of their last 10 fights combined. We're talking about 6 losses. So out of their last 10 fights, 6 losses to 4 wins put together. Kind of interesting. Both them coming off losses. Alessio De Chirico just got knocked out in a brutal fashion by Abdulrazak Al-Hassan. Before that, he knocked out Joaquin Buckley in brutal fashion. Losses to Zach Cummings, Makhmud Muradov, and Kevin Holland before that. Well, Roman Kopylov came into the UFC undefeated, if you guys remember, where he took on Carl Robertson, and interestingly enough, got exploited with his ground game against Carl Robertson down on the mat. It was 2.5 years ago. I believe that fight card took place in Russia, I do believe. I know it took place outside outside of America, way over there somewhere. It might have been in Asia. I'm not going to get into all that stuff, whether Russia is considered the continent of Asia, whatever. But you guys know what I'm saying. Oh yeah, you know what? Let's pull it up. How about that? Let's pull it up. I heard one of you guys. You said it's made that up. Let's see here. Moscow, Russia. Told you, bro. No, I can hear you guys through the computer. But back to the fight. I'm just messing with you guys here. But yeah, that did take place in Moscow. And I remember because Roman really embarrassed himself. The way that he showcased his skills there. And I feel like he really embarrassed himself. Of course, it was in his home country. But I think that he is a better fighter than what he showcased. I mean, Carl Robertson is not that talented of a grappler. And then you saw Roman in his last fight actually stuff some takedowns against Albert Duryov, who's a very, very talented grappler and wrestler. And Roman, he showed some solid takedown defense at times in that fight, and he definitely showed that he's extremely tough. His face was all over the place, and he was still hanging tough. He still was coming forward. I think that was actually a good showing for Roman Kopylov, and I'm very familiar with that fight. I just rewatched it, but I had an official play with Albert Duryov parlayed with Khamzat Chimaev on that fight card, and I was actually disappointed for how closely that fight was taking place. I thought that Duryov should have absolutely mopped Kopylov. Based on what I was seeing in the Robertson fight and whatnot, and how Duryov was looking going in that fight. And Kopylov, at 31 years old, I mean, you got to think that he went back to the drawing board at that time and continued to sharpen up his skill set. How do we not believe that he's gone back to the drawing board after that loss and sharpened up his skill set even more so 9 months ago? De Chirico coming off a head kick knockout loss. You got to wonder where his mindset's at. You see me squirreling around over here because I've been very torn on who I want to go with this pick here. Fittingly, of course, Not that it matters, but yeah, it's a close line, which again, that doesn't really have any bearing. I mean, I break down the tape, I look at all the X factors, and I try to make my decision, but it is a very close fight. De Chirico at -120 with Kopylov at -103. Slight lean De Chirico's way. The reason why I'm so torn on this fight, again, is the fact that De Chirico just got knocked out devastatingly. I'm wondering how his chin's going to hold up if Kopylov touches him up a little bit. Kopylov, like I said, had major improvements from his one loss to his second loss, but still losing. His eight victories coming into the UFC were against lower level talent, so it's kind of hard to judge those. We could take a quick look at those together real quick. Before coming into the UFC, he was finishing a lot of guys as well, but none of these fighters really stood out to me, to be quite honest. Fighters with losing records, some okay fighters here, but 19-10. Wasibe Anamoto, I believe the Japanese fighter there. You can kind of scavenge together a couple decent victories, maybe the Kobe Ortiz or the Luis Dutra or the Ikiana fight. He's been late in fights too. He's fought deep into the fourth round before, so that's something that's good too. We already know that he has that warrior spirit. I feel that Alessio De Chirico should be a little bit more skilled in the striking department, and he should be able to win a decision there. But if this fight turns into a slugfest, I think that there's a more realistic possibility that Kopylov is going to hurt De Chirico. And I'm gonna flip back to the other side once again. I'm gonna take Kopylov to win this fight. Screw it. I was gonna go with De Chirico because I do think that De Chirico is the more talented striker to an extent, but I'm wondering about De Chirico's chin. De Chirico is not a guy that regularly wins his fights, and Kopylov is a guy that seems to me that he's extremely hungry here, and I'm going to take Kopylov to win this fight, and I think there's a possibility that he lands the knockout victory there or gets a TKO victory over a weathered and hurt De Chirico, who is he's been in some solid fights. He's been in some fights before. So I mean, that knockout though against Abdul Razak Al Hassan was disgusting. So I'm going to say that Kopylov touches him up a little bit. We'll see how it goes. All this Bovada talk got me scrolling over, checking out some future lines. How about that Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz fight? Khamzat's at -1600 on Bovada. That's crazy. If you guys didn't realize, man, Bovada is where it's at. There's all types of betting lines on here. Cage Fury Fighting Championship, Fame MMA, LFA, Dana White's Contender Series is on here. It's all on here. The prop bets, you see these are the prop bets here. There's only a couple right now, but as the fight gets closer, they really start to open those up, and you'll see a lot of prop bets as well. So do understand that for some reason they release them a little bit closer to the fight, but a lot of props to work with on Bovada. In my opinion, Bovada is the best sports book out. So if you're thinking of possibly joining Bovada.lv, reach out to me. Let me hit you up with my referral link. We'll both get a bonus in our accounts, and more importantly, I'm going to give you two free packages for any fight cards that you want moving forward. You can use them for any fight card you want moving forward. But for 2 events, you'll have all my official plays. So if you're interested, don't hesitate. Reach out to me. In the co-main event, we have 2 of the best middleweight fighters on planet Earth throwing down. Robert Whittaker, of course, without a doubt, the runner-up to Israel Adesanya. I know he's lost twice to him. A lot of people thought that Robert Whittaker won the second time around. It was a close fight. Of course, the first time, Whittaker was starched by Izzy as well. But Whittaker is a very, very talented middleweight fighter, the former champion. In fact, the fighter that Izzy took the belt from. Then you have Jared Cannonier there with Vettori right on his heels. In fact, it's kind of hard to say who is number 2 because I guess it's a tie. It says 2 and 2 with Vettori bumping up one. So I guess it's a 2A, 2B type situation with him and Cannonier. Vettori, a well-rounded fighter. Obviously, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to go there actually, but Vettori is a fighter that is very well-rounded, and not only can he go out there and really pick you apart on the feet if you're not up to par there, he's a guy that can exploit your grappling game. If your takedown defense ain't up to par, he's taking you down. He's a very well-rounded fighter, is Vettori. the way he looked against Izzy was not a good showcasing for him at all. Obviously, he was just trying to push the takedowns and wasn't having any success and just looked very lethargic in there. In a fight like this, I don't expect him to really have any success with the takedowns and the grappling against a guy like Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker has shown to have good takedown defense, and before that loss that he just took to Izzy, he took out Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, and Darren Till before getting knocked out by Izzy. So you got the 2 Izzy losses there surrounding his 3 victories. I expect Whittaker to be able to keep this fight on the feet, where I think that Whittaker is quicker and more explosive with his striking, where Vettori, although he can push the pace there, is a little bit clunky, as I like to say. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Vettori's a little clunky with his striking at times. But if you do slow down, Vettori's the type of fighter that will march forward and really put it on you. But Whittaker is not the type of fighter to slow down. Whittaker is going to be coming into this fight ready to go. And he seems to be hungry. I know that loss that he just took to Izzy really left a bad taste in his mouth. I know that for a fact. If you've heard interviews with the way he's talked about that fight, he's looking to wreak havoc and make another push. In this fight here, he's going to have a half-inch reach disadvantage. There's nothing really going on there. Both guys 6 foot. I mean, these guys really match up very evenly in a lot of ways. Both guys primed as far as their age goes. We're talking about 2 of the best middleweights on planet Earth. I still do believe that Whittaker he's just a step up. And as this fight takes place on the feet, I expect Whittaker to, I don't want to say outclass. I'm not going to say outclass, but I expect him to shine against Whittaker, against Vettori here. I think he'll land some nice shots and he'll look like he's in another gear than what Vettori is on the feet. Vettori will get a little bit frustrated. He'll try to shoot a couple takedowns, but again, I think Whittaker will stuff them, and it'll look better for the judges' scorecards when Whittaker's stuffing those takedowns as well. Give me Whittaker to win this fight. He's a -230 right now. Is that high? I don't know if that's high. I think that's pretty accurate. Maybe you want to say he could be a -210 or whatnot, but it's right around there. He should be slightly over a 2-1 favorite is Whittaker, with that clear path to victory and just not really believing that Vettori is going to be able to use his grappling against Whittaker. So I do have Whittaker to win the fight, most likely decision, but Whittaker has fight-ending power on the feet. Watch if he sets up a nasty head kick. He sets up some nasty ones at times. So we'll see how it goes. Tuivasa taking on Ciryl Gane in the main event. This fight is a lot of fun here. Ciryl Gane, one of the most technical, if not the most technical, striking heavyweight of all time. I mean, there's been a few that have came around, but Ciryl Gane, he moves around like he's a middleweight fighter on the feet. I mean, he's just, to go along with his technical abilities, he's fluid, he's smooth. I'm a big fan of his striking game. Now, of course, not too happy with him with the way that he dropped the ball against Francis Ngannou. That was a fight that he had in the bag. Came down to that 5th round. He was sitting in Francis Ngannou's guard and chose to drop back for a heel hook. What the hell were you thinking there? If he would have just sat in his guard, had some more control time, I don't even feel like going into that argument against him. Don't even hit me up in the comment section. But without a doubt, Ciryl Gane handed over the heavyweight championship of the world. And I know some of you Francis fans will get a little upset with me there, but I mean, that's how I feel about it. And I don't want to take anything away from Francis, because Francis did what he needed to do there to get on top and then do his little thing to steal that round. But Ciryl Gane did not have to drop back for that. He needed to be heavy, sit on top of Francis there, just take that round, win the fight, just pepper him up a little bit. And that was his fight for the taking. Both of those guys did not look good in the later rounds. If you remember, Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou was not a fan of course, their grappling abilities, but the way their cardio looked. I think that there's a realistic chance that we see guys like Ciryl Gane and Francis Ngannou get exploited later in fights in those types of situations, which we've already seen Francis Ngannou exploited there. If you're able to make it past the first round with him, like Stipe Miocic did, well, you have to be talented first and foremost, but a guy like Stipe Miocic, you get past the first round and you see what he did to a guy like Francis Ngannou. Ciryl Gane is not a guy like Stipe Miocic. Miocic has another gear as far as cardio goes late, and he's obviously a much more polished grappler and wrestler. Let's just make that clear. But if you go out there and you get knocked out, it doesn't matter, right? So if Stipe goes out there and gets starched by a guy like Gane early or Francis, it doesn't matter. You know, Stipe needs to learn to be a little bit more patient and a little bit more cerebral in there at times. But the word is he's fighting John Jones. Cannot wait for that fight. But back to this fight. Of course, I had to go on a little tangent there. Ciryl Gane, super technical. Tai Tuivasa, more technical than a lot of people actually give him credit for. Of course, he has big-time power. Was he coming off a knockout against Derek Lewis? What a fight that was. Slept him. Before that, knocked out Augusto Sakai, knocked out Greg Hardy, knocked out Harry Honeysuckle, knocked out Stefan Struve. I mean, he's been starching dudes left and right. And the thing that you got to love about Tai Tuivasa is the fact that he's been taking the game way more serious as of recently. That we know. He's been coming in better shape. His skills are more polished. And he already has some natural ability, so you mix all that up, and he's a dangerous man right now. He really is. If he lands a big shot on Ciryl, of course, there's no question he could put him out. Any man in this division, any man can get knocked out at any given time, but in this division, it really only takes one, especially when you're talking about a guy like Tai Tuivasa. So first and foremost, understand there's a real possibility Tai lands that big shot. And I'm curious to see what this fight looks like in the later rounds if it goes there. I may edge Tai in those wrestling exchanges and the grueling exchanges. Was not a fan of how Ciryl looked late in that fight. We talked about that already. That being said, there's something that Ciryl does very well. He does it very well, and it could really help him out in this fight, and that is his striking defense. It's not even only just his striking defense, his defensive IQ, his defensive patient, is that a word? Patientness. You guys get what I'm saying. He's very cautious. Let's go with cautiousness. All right. He's very cautious. I think that he will stay away from that big shot of Tai. I think that he'll play it very safe and he'll pick his spots to explode and go in. And I think that he will outpoint Tai Tuivasa here. And I have Ciryl Gane winning 4-1 in this fight. I think that Ciryl gets the job done. We'll make our way over to the betting line, and you will be surprised to see Ciryl Gane is a -575 favorite, and that's with a little bit of action coming in on Tai Tuivasa. We've seen Ciryl Gane as high in some books, up in the -600s, which is pretty crazy, but I think I understand what they think they're seeing, but don't sleep on Tai Tuivasa. That line is off. More value on Tai at +400. I think Ciryl Gane should be a -400, -450, right around there. But at the end of the day, I do think that Ciryl Gane will kind of pick Tai apart a little bit, and I got to go at Ciryl Gane to get the job done, and he'll look to make another push towards the top of the division, and Ciryl Gane will be my pick. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC Paris. If I look a little worn out, we've been chirping here for a little bit, and been a little rusty on the mic, but I'm also recording this now as I'm finishing this video off. It is 1 in the morning here Thursday night, well, technically Friday morning, so it's getting late, but you guys know what it is, man. We crunch this tape out, get this video out to you guys here. Hopefully you didn't mind the slight delay, but like I said, there was a bunch of fights that weren't even put together yet. There was fights that had a swapping of an opponent, so I think it was the best thing, and I wouldn't even be shocked if we see some things shake up from the moment I recorded this to next week leading up to the fight. So if that is the case, I'll adjust some stuff and we'll put up some new content, but we'll have that all coming to you. Dana White's Contender Series, I want to get that video up to you guys tomorrow, today, Friday. Hopefully you guys seeing that here on the channel Friday night. Of course, the fight's taking place Tuesday. And then, if you guys haven't already checked out, I did a little video, GSP versus Kamaru Usman. Talked about some things, who's the greatest welterweight of all time. You guys can expect a lot more content coming to you guys like that. But even more importantly, as I promised you guys, you can see, or you can expect to see the channel constantly have upgrades. I'm in the process of getting the green screen behind me. I do want to get some new cameras going, get a new camera going and whatnot. I don't know. How's the teller looking here? Am I a little blurry? Am I looking clear? Let me know. But I'm thinking about getting a new camera and just having a whole new setup. This whole Vegas thing's going to all be gone. It's going to all look different, man. This whole thing's going to look different. So you guys should be expecting to see a lot of new stuff. So hopefully you're excited for that. What else should I say, man? Before I leave, got to hit you up with a motivational statement. But first and foremost, please like this video if you guys haven't already, especially you guys that are here late watching this video or listening to this video late. You guys are my main supporters. You guys know I love you. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And we're going to go back to an old school one. Don't smoke cigarettes, all right? I hope you guys aren't smoking cigarettes out there. I'm sure some of you are, because out of the thousands, a couple thousand that are watching this video, I'm sure there's a couple cigarette smokers, especially all of us degenerate gamblers. Probably even more likely there's some degenerate cigarette smokers. Cut those things out, man. Telling you. You think about it, man. You know, there's some things that have gone on with me recently. Some things got in my life, and you know, when you're in a bad situation and you have the thought of regret of things you could have did to kind of avoid specific things from happening, that's the worst thing. So, but even more importantly, when you have something bad like that happening to you, it's the worst feeling. A lot of us go through our daily activities of life and just think that every day is promised the next day, and that's not necessarily the case. So life can be crazy at times. Don't do certain things that increase negativity to come towards your way. And there's a lot of things we could talk about in that sense, but cigarettes is a real simple one. And maybe it's easier for me to say because I'm not addicted to them, and I know it's hard to break the habit, but there's a lot of ways to do it. You can call that number up. There's some type of hotline. Google it. They'll send you nicotine gum. Get on that nicotine gum. I don't know. Maybe it's better to smoke the vape, the e-vapes, but I'm not a big fan of those either. Those kind of mess me up. So maybe you don't want to go that. Maybe you want to really stop smoking that crap in general. So for any of you guys that are still smoking cigarettes, hopefully this video here, this statement maybe pushes you a little bit more towards quitting and giving you more years to spend with your family and more years to live on this beautiful planet. All right. So hopefully I didn't upset any of you cigarette smokers out there. Love you guys. On that note, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.